Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Well, welcome everyone. This is Jerry Teo with the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders as part of our Healing Generations podcast and the Healing Generations Institute. We'd like to welcome you and thank you all so much for joining us today on this journey, on this dialogue, with a focus on bringing forth the tremendous knowledge and intellect and beauty and blessings from our ancestors, from the people of our cultures, but also recognizing that the world that we're in today, we need a lot of healing. And so taking the responsibility for how we do that healing as well. And as we do every time that we meet, we want to begin by thanking Creator, thanking all those ancestors that came before us, all those historical people in our lives that really set the tone for who we are today. You know, the history of how our people have struggled, gone through many difficulties, but didn't give up. Didn't stop praying for us, didn't stop struggling for us, didn't stop teaching us, didn't stop breathing into us life and love in order that we could live a life that is better. And so we want to thank those ancestors, thank the people of the land that you're on, wherever you're at, thank the people of your community, those neighborhoods of which you work and live, thank your families, and we come down to ourselves. And, you know, as you take a deep breath, just acknowledge yourself today for being on this journey with us. And today, I feel very excited because we have someone on the podcast with us today that's a long time friend, man, long time brother, long time colleague, someone that has been doing this work for many, many years, but just a really good partner in this work. What I'm talking about is Dr. Jeffery Johnson, and he is the president, CEO of National Partnership for Community Leadership, and a pioneer really in the field of fatherhood and family strengthening and bringing community to life with the skills and the values and the traditions to make them better. Dr. Johnson, I've known him for a lot of years. We've been on this road a whole number of years together, and man, he's still doing tremendous work. And so, Jeff, I just want to thank you for coming on with us and invite you to welcome the audience.
Thank you, Jerry, for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. I feel truly blessed and honored to be in your company. We have, been colleagues in the struggle for family strengthening, father recognition for many, many years. And I'd like to just say to your viewing and listening audience that I am a preacher's kid. And so I give an honor to God, who is the head of my life. My father was a pastor, and he grounded me in the understanding that there's power in prayer, and that we can do all things, through Christ who strengthens us. I think it's just so important that, people recognize that the true essence of all faith traditions is love, and how important it is to, summon love as the foundation for our interactions, for who we are, and also love of self. Being a man of color, I have to remind myself sometimes that, I have to love myself because of some of the challenges I face as a man of color, an African-American man. What I like to say, I love being an African-American man, but sometimes it's just inconvenient, in terms of some of the realities that we face. But I give honor to our ancestors and their resilience, their ability to overcome many challenges and to also maintain a high sense of hope, for changes that will occur that will make society more equitable and will give everyone in this land every opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in ways that are special to them and that ways that are special to their families and their communities. And so it's just, again, a great pleasure and honor to be with you, Jerry, and to just share, those thoughts with your viewing and listening audience.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. you began by saying you're a preacher's son. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about your journey, where you come from, where were you raised, who raised you, and because this man that we see in front of us right now that has guided so many and guided an organization that's helped so many, came from some roots and came from an upbringing that gave him a foundation. Can you share a little bit about your journey and your upbringing?
Yeah, my journey is that I came from the Detroit area. I lived in Detroit for many years, but I was born right outside of Detroit in a town called Ypsilanti, Michigan. And I grew up in a family of 10 children, including 8 boys. And I am the middle child. And so I grew up, near, Skid Row, and worked on Skid Row, shining shoes, and, from Jerry, the 7th grade to the 12th grade. And it was a lot of those brothers who came in there to get their shoes shined, who worked in the plants and the factories that make up, the state of Michigan and Detroit area. And they saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. They saw management skills because, I started off shining shoes, and then I ended up managing the shoe shine parlor. That's why I stayed so long, because I was able to, earn income legally through that. And I brought my brothers with me. I've had 3 of my siblings who worked at the shoe shine parlor with me. And so in doing so, that enabled us to kind of stay out of trouble, if you will. But also I had cousins and relatives and friends who would come by, and they would always say, "That's my nephew over there. That's my friend. Don't mess with him," and kind of kept a shield of protection around us. And then, of course, given the fact that my father was a pastor, I went to church every Sunday during the time he was living. And my father was a good man. Many of us, Jerry, in the fatherhood work came from experiences where either our father was absent or there were some challenges with that. In my family, that was different. I had a good dad. He was there. He died when I was 12 years of age. And I literally, essentially, have been on my own, given the family size since I was, 12 years of age. My mom, gathered all the siblings and basically said that it was just her. And she worked in the health industry, and she basically said that for those of you who can go out and earn some money to get you some jeans and get you some sneakers, you need to do that, and so, and that's what I did. I guess the other part that a lot of people don't know about me, is that, when I was, graduating from high school, without the guidance of my dad, I did have the support of my uncles, but they weren't necessarily, they had their own families. And so really it was, my siblings, we were raising each other. And so I ended up, graduating from, high school barely, with a, 1.5, GPA. And I was playing basketball, and basketball was my motivation industry and energy. I went to my school counselor and asked my school counselor, I said, "Look, finally, I kind of, want to do things in the correct way in school. Can you help me get in somebody's college?" And she, told me that, I was not college material, and basically told me, just like my grandfather, just like my father and brothers, that the only place for me to go to work was, in the factory, and to leave her office and allow her to work with students who were more deserving of going to college. And so had it not been for the grace of God, I wouldn't have been able to summon the strength. And so essentially what I did from there, Jerry, I went out to a community college, was able to play basketball, and was able to raise my grade point average up from a 1.5 to a 3.5, and transferred to the University of Michigan. That was a dual enrollment program. I was able to even make the junior varsity basketball team at the University of Michigan. Graduated 7 years later with a PhD in A average. Wow. And I say that, Jerry, because a lot of young boys really don't know what their potential is. Yes. And that all the tools and all the abilities that we need to succeed in life is in us. And we have to learn how to pray. We have to learn how to be around others that will encourage us. And I had a lot of mentors along the way who saw things in me. And once I got on that learning track, I never stopped. I'm still learning. There's something to be learned every single day. There's something to be shared. And I also learned that, my life is just like my own. And as you well know, because it's been your life's work too, of much who's given, much is required. So I understand that fully. I embrace it with a sense of responsibility, in the sense of making sure that I do everything I can to make the world better than the one in which I inherited. And so that's my focus on fatherhood. And my whole focus on fatherhood has as much to do with the future of our children as it does father themselves. Close friend of ours who passed away. Matter of fact, the person who told me that I had to meet you, whose award you received this year, Dr. Charles Ballard, he said, you got to meet Jerry Teo. And that was almost 30 years ago. Yes. And Charles is, his tagline or his vision statement was connecting the hearts of fathers to children and the hearts of children to fathers. And in that scripture, in the Christian Bible, in the Old Testament, Malachi 4:6 is that if we don't connect the hearts of fathers to children, children's hearts to fathers, then God will come and curse the land. And if you look at the various calamities and things that we've gone through and are experiencing even now, I think it speaks to the role of fathers and parents. And my goal has always been to have two loving parents involved in the life of children so that they can grow and develop and to be all that God has intended them to be.
Wow. You point to many things that resonate with me. As a young boy growing up in Compton, I remember that, Sundays were really important. It was church day. And, I had one of my best friends, Tyrone Mosley. We used to play all the time. And I remember when we were both about 6 or 7 or something like that playing. And I first started to get to know his family, him get to know my family. I remember one Sunday, we had gotten these new little cars, right? It was right like after Christmas and got these new little cars. And I said, hey, man, bring your car over. We're going to play. It was Sunday. I said, I'm going to go to church first, but I'll be back. I'll be back in about an hour and bring your car over and we'll play little cars. He says, I don't come back till night. I said, what? He said, I'm going to church. I don't come back till night. I said, no, after church. He said, no, we go to church till night. I said, what? He said, yeah, we go to church. We go to Sunday school. Then we go to, I said, you go to church all day? He said, yeah, we go to church till night. And I said, man, that's a lot of church. Why you got to go to church so much for, And I didn't understand why Tyrone and his family, went to church all day till night, until much later, I was talking to this gentleman, this elder in the community. And he says, little Jerry, that's the only time of the week where we can be around our own people and feel loved and feel safe. He says, and on that day, we pray that the rest of the week we okay. He says, because this world that we live in sometimes don't like us and don't want us to get ahead, And I really, I didn't understand that until much later, as I grew up in Compton and Watts, there was the Watts blowouts, the riots, and all the burn, and I began to get a consciousness to, the struggles of young black and brown boys growing up in injustice, where there's racism and all of that, and it really amplifies, your accomplishments, because I know, it wasn't easy growing up, through those struggles and having a counselor who's supposed to help you, tell you, no, you can't. You're not smart enough. You're not capable enough, Thank God that somebody loved you up enough to make you believe in yourself and that you had prayer in your life. Because sometimes, when nothing else is there, all we got is that prayer.
That's all we got.
That's all we got is that prayer, So talk to me a little bit about that, about how did you get through those struggles, brother? Because I know, even as running a nonprofit and trying to get funds, this is not an easy business, even when you do become a professional.
Well, it's interesting. I've always, whether or not I accept it or not, have been guided by the love and faith of my ancestors and my parents. And that spirit, quickens itself in me whenever struggle occurs, and that, again, I'm just grounded in that scripture. I can do all things, through Christ that strengthens me. And that's my fallback prayer line. And so you have to have that. I was a college assistant professor for a long journey. At the same time, I was doing the work, in fatherhood. And I used to teach leadership. And I used to always teach future leaders, about how leadership was a art more so than a science. And it was about going places. And I also talked to them about being in leadership positions and how it was necessary to be grounded in something bigger than themselves, because the standard view of leadership, particularly when you have to make tough decisions, is that leadership, you spend a lot of time alone. And what I used to say to them is that you don't have to be. You don't have to be alone, because that's what, causes the many illnesses. People, can't manage the stress properly. They can't manage the different changes that go on, and because they're trying to do it by themselves. And I've learned a long time ago, you can't do it by yourself. You have to be anchored spiritually in order to summon a sense of consciousness that allows you to be able to meditate and to be able to lean and to leave the hard part there and to do the parts that you can. And to me, that's where you get your breakthrough. And my father, that was the foundation that he laid. Now, when he was around, what I didn't realize, one, he used to always talk to me about, being a doctor. I didn't know the difference between a PhD and a medical doctor. You know what I mean? So he was talking about that. And then when we had Youth Sunday, what I didn't realize, because I had siblings, half of my siblings were older than I was. But on Youth Day, he would always put me, in the front, to lead the devotion. And I was in the choir. And so he also made sure that I sang my lead songs on that day. And it's been on reflection that I've gone back and really been able to understand the seed that he was sowing. You know what I mean? And us elders, as you know, along the way, we sow a lot of seed, and I didn't understand sowing in a way in which I understand it now, but that's what he was doing. And that's kind of the man he made me into. It's like I understand clearly who I am. I'm a former history teacher as well. When I started my career, I started off as a high school history teacher with an emphasis on African American studies. And so I became immersed in it. So much so, Jerry, I'm going to share something with you, that my first class that I had, back in the 1970s with a group of high school students, do you know that for their 40th high school reunion, they invited me back as a first year teacher to be their keynote speaker. Wow. Because of what they said, what I sold into them. And 40 years after that, they were still remembering the conversations that we had about life, history, and how important it was for them to be a part of history and to make a contribution and to understand that as much as we read about enslavement and African Americans kind of being, chattel and a thing, one of the things, and I was sharing with my wife a little bit early on, that one of the part of African American history, and it's a part of Brown history as well, is our resistance. Is our resistance. It's not like we laid down and allowed those things to happen without a fight. Right. That is what some folks maybe out of Florida would call, being woke. Yeah, I want to be woke, because that understanding resistance also gives you the type of inspiration that you need to have the ability to fight back, as well as say we should overcome, but to fight back, and to fight back in ways that relate to social justice and equity and civil rights. And we can never forget our role and responsibility when it comes to that, in terms of who we are now, but also in terms of, what we sow into young people. Because if we don't do it, let me say social media and the internet will. And so we have to really be very active and really try to instill in them a sense of duty and responsibility, but also meet them where they are and really try to be as intergenerational as we can without trying to dominate with our deja vu moments, because, their experiences are somewhat different, but our struggle is common and the struggle continues, but, we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And again, I rest on the foundation of love, peace, and collaboration, because, you can't do it by yourself. And we have to have love for self and love for other human beings as a way of addressing the area of healing. Healing is a very, very important element of our work. And Jerry, that's been really a staple of your work. For the last 3 years at our International Fatherhood Conference, I have invited a young lady out of the University of Michigan. Her name is Dr. Shantae Glenn, and she actually wrote her PhD on forgiveness. And what she's been trying to do is get me and others in the fatherhood field to incorporate forgiveness as part of our curriculum, with the view being of course, that's where the healing takes place. And, healing is more for you than even for the person you're giving it to, so that you can move on. And that is the dilemma that a lot of our children face also, by not having fathers or having bad father experiences or trauma and all those things related to that absence or the abuse that may have been in that relationship. And you have to get to the point where, one, you have to be safe, but the other part of it is that you have to move your spirit and mind toward a posture of forgiveness so you can move on. There was a young lady that I mentored who wrote a book. Her name is Robin Wright King, and she wrote a book, and it was entitled Papa Was a Rolling Stone, A Daughter's Journey to Forgiveness. And what she found was that because of some of the challenges she had with her own father, who lived, by the way, 5 blocks away and never visited her and her sister.
Wow.
5 blocks away.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of experiencing that and having her issues with men, she actually would get in relationships, and the relationships wouldn't last long at all. And it was issues of the fact that, he's not going to stay anyway. So, before it even ends, let's end it now kind of thing. They're not even giving the relationship a chance. But it was not until she says in this book that she forgave her father for what he had done in her life was she able to move on. And I think now, Robin, in her current marriage, she has been married 25 years now,
wow.
As a consequence of just being able to move on. So that's how powerful that is. That is something that's a very much a part of our work. It always has been. And we have to make sure that, again, we do that continually as we move forward.
Right. I appreciate you lifting that up. At the same time, I think it's, it's a struggle for me and many folks that I work with too, because it seems like as we, engender these values, some of the things have not changed.
Right.
The racism and the oppression and the belittling, and now they don't even want us to teach about our history.
Right.
We can't even tell the truth. We got to pretend that didn't happen, or it, and what people don't realize, and what we're recognizing now, is that generational trauma. What went on with our fathers, our grandfathers, our mothers, our grandmothers sits in our bodies.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, the reason why Black and brown folks struggled so much is because our health was already compromised by the stress and the trauma of what we go through and what our people in our lives have gone through. So it's difficult to forgive when things continue to repeat. But I really want to resonate with what you're saying, because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting.
Right.
It means remembering the lesson, but not holding it in your body.
That's right.
What someone else did, right?
Right.
We end up holding somebody else's pain, somebody else's dysfunction, somebody else's imbalance in our own bodies, where that forgiveness is, okay, let me release it because it's really not mine, but I'm not going to forget the lesson. And part of the lesson, and I think as fathers, part of the lesson is let's not repeat.
Right.
The wounds of what our fathers have done. Let's not repeat of what's been done to us. And I think that has been really the lifelong work that many of us have done for many, many years around fatherhood. How can we take the best of those that have come before and integrate it and transform that so that the next generation, so our children, have a better experience and can relay something better. Talk to me about that inspiration that drew you into fatherhood, and now how many years later with MPCL?
Okay, MPCL is 27 years old.
Yeah,
and I've been involved in the fatherhood work very directly in all phases of it for 33 years. You know what I mean? And I would say that what I've come to the point in this work is that it's a couple things. One, we have to see ourselves as parent educators, because I think that this notion of working with fathers, and you use that terminology, it's kind of nebulous. It does not ground you in really the work that we do. And I think the work that we do is parent education, with a particular focus on fathers, but it's parent education nonetheless, because the term education is something that society understands. They understand it has a starting point, and it's an ongoing kind of thing, but it's education. So I think that's what we have to do. I also think that, one of the things when I started out, in fact, I've been doing the work maybe over 40 years, because when I started, I was doing work with mentoring and rites of passage. That's what led me to the fatherhood work. I was doing that work, and I helped set up the National Association of Mentoring, Inc., and really kind of looking at the importance of, looking at the whole issue of father absence, what was happening in our cities, with the crack epidemic and all those things going on, and really kind of resonated with the whole mentoring movement around, making sure that positive male role models came in the lives, particularly of boys, but also girls, and really, wrote curriculum on rites of passage. In fact, we have a rites of passage program at my church, and the rites of passage program has been a high-functioning organization for 22 years. And I wrote the curriculum for rites of passage. And I think that we have to start early. So we have to do both prevention, but also intervention. And we got to talk about healthy relationships. We got to talk about the role of fathers, the role of mothers, while children are young, because all of our children don't have the benefit of having two loving parents in their household. In fact, Jerry, 75% of African-American children are born outside of marriage. 75%. 40% of all of our children are born outside of marriage. That's why you have to, in some of the marriage conversations that you and I have, been exposed to over the years, the policy agendas or whatever, when you start at marriage, you overlook all the kids who were brought into the world who were not married. And so you can't, it's a part of a continuum in a healthy relationship, but a lot of children come into the world and the relationship between the parents is not healthy. And so what I've also realized, in addition to focusing on the issue of parent education and being able to be clear about that's what we're about, but also to bring into the whole conversation with some structure, this whole idea of healthy co-parenting, and that co-parenting is a necessary element, particularly for not only those who are not married, but for those who are not only not married, but never intended to marry in the first place. Right. And that's very important because, when we talk about settling parental differences in a divorce situation, that is a legal on-ramp, and that allows couples who were married to be able to come up with some written agreement that's overseen by the court. That's very important, and that happens. But in those cases where the parents, I say parents, not the couple, the parents were not married, they never intended to marry, I think that there's an education process needs to happen with them that allows them to understand that you can come up with a co-parenting agreement outside the court that can be functional and meaningful. In fact, Jerry, I'm working on probably one of the nation's biggest projects on co-parenting right now in Memphis, Tennessee, under the leadership of Commissioner Clarence Carter, who's been head of Human Services or TANF for 3 presidents. And that the whole idea behind it is to educate these parents. The father is in child support, child is living with the mother, so she's on TANF. And what we're doing is linking the child support case with the TANF case, and we're offering services to both mothers and fathers, and to protect the safety issues that may be associated with their coming together, because they're not in the same room, but Jerry, they're on the same Zoom. Not the same room, but on the same Zoom. And the project just started, a few months ago, but we're already getting co-parenting agreements. And what we hear from parents is that they've never heard of co-parenting, right? And so, and we shouldn't think that's unusual, because again, that is something that was born in the context of what divorcing couples have to come up with to submit to the judge. But if your parents have never been married, you don't talk about co-parenting. And so to me, I think we have a role. And this is the other thing. Without the co-parenting, let me tell you what happens. You don't get the fatherhood visitation. And if you don't get the fatherhood visitation, you got to have access. All right. So you could be an active father. If you don't have access, you can't engage. If you don't have access, you can't assume your responsibilities. And so I even said at our national conference, I had the head of the Office of Healthy Marriage and Responsible Fatherhood, as one of a panel member, along with Wade Horn and a couple other folks. And I asked him to, show us the data. Where are you with this? What has happened? How many of you enrolled? How many have graduated? And when he said that of the close to 13,000 folks had gone through the program in I guess the last 5 years or so across the country, half had not completed the program. I said, that is unacceptable.
That's right.
That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so these are some of the things that we're dealing with, some of the approaches that we're taking, again, to try to remedy the whole issue of children not having two loving parents in their lives.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that is what we want children to have so that they can grow and develop and to reach their highest human potential without feeling that they don't have these persons involved in their lives.
Right. And I think what you're pointing to is the impact of all these systemic things on children.
Yes, yes.
Because then children grow up feeling unwanted, without the guidance, without the love, without the protection, and feeling like there's something wrong with them as well.
Right.
I think what a lot of people don't understand also is the systemic impact of fatherlessness. So we recognize that the system has taken Black and brown men out of homes, incarcerated them, deported them, kept them from visiting their children, kept them from visitation, not included them in court, or all kinds of things that have kept fathers away from children.
Right.
And what we see is a residual of second and third generation children now that have not had that in their lives. And because of that, now they come up with mental health issues, with health issues, with substance abuse, gang issue, all kinds of residual impacts. And through this pandemic, we really have seen it exacerbate to a whole load of mental health issues as well. Mm-hmm. And I think, the work that you and so many others, that we've done for many, many years has really been trying to get at the root of this. Mm-hmm. And I just want to appreciate you, Jeff, for the long-standing work. And you've been in it for a long time. And, through different administrations, different systems that don't want to fund, don't want to support, don't understand, and especially don't understand Black and brown men and Black and brown fathers, that what we have to go through, And so, I want to take this moment just to acknowledge you for your perseverance and for your faith and for your prayer and for your leadership in helping so many, And I think about it, us 30 years ago when we're...
oh boy. Hey, listen, let me take off my hat, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Our hair was a lot darker and we had hair,
right.
But we didn't give up and we didn't stop. And what we learned is that, in spite of all the challenges, in spite of the resistance, in spite of the racism and oppression, we are called really to be honorable men, to step up for the children and to do the best we can,
Right.
And as we come around the corner here, you walked a long journey just like myself, and you're elder, you're a wisdom keeper. You have so many lessons. And I wonder if you could offer some points of counsel or advice for that next generation that's coming up, those that are interested in being good fathers, those that are interested in being leaders in this movement of preparing this way so that children have it better. What points of advice and counsel and wisdom can you give that next generation?
I would just say that, for the current fatherhood practitioners, the ones, I'm going to say 5-10 years in the business, all right, so to speak. And it's the business of fatherhood to some extent. I think it's very important for them to recognize the history of our work. People like you and I and Charles Ballard. Ballard goes back to 1976, in terms of, his contributions, the Ron Mincy's, the Wade Horns, the David Blankenhorns, the Sarah McClanahans, the Joe Joneses, these are folks who have paved the way over the years. And this new generation of fatherhood practitioners need to be educated on who they are. They need to understand the policy, the research, the evaluation, and that information is out there. They just have to be disciplined enough to get it, but also respectful enough to get it. I think that, one of the things that is so important is not to think, one, that you started everything, and then secondly, that you don't appreciate the value of elders in the work. It's interesting. Many years ago, I had an opportunity to go to a Southern Christian Leadership Conference, under the direction of Reverend Joseph Lowry. And that came after Dr. King, after Abernathy. And I went to the conference just to see, kind of what it was about. And when I got there, Jerry, here was Dr. Lowry doing literally everything. He was at the registration desk. He was, making sure that the food was prepared, for, at lunchtime. And he was doing all those things. And I got the impression that here was a man with all the gifts and contributions that he had made, was holding on for dear life. He was holding for dear life because, one, maybe he had not mentored, in the way in which he should. But the other part of it was the fact of young people not understanding their responsibility in the sense of taking some of that burden off of him, but not casting him away, because he still had a lot to contribute, because he had no business doing all that. But I got that sense. And that alarmed me. And that really has said to me, Jerry, we got to do a better job of mentoring and to let go and allow our young people to grow, to make some mistakes, but at the same time understand the history so they won't make as many mistakes as maybe we have had to experience. Another part of it is to approach this work with love and passion. There's just no way that you can sustain yourself in this work without loving the work that we do. It's hard, Jerry. It's hard. Like you said, I've been through administrations. Do you know I've been in Washington? I came to Washington the same month and week as Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
And I'm still here. Right. And, I've gone through a lot. So I've gone through the Reagans, both Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, and the Trumps and the Bidens. So I've been perched right in Washington, D.C. And as you know, part of what I've been doing along the way is following the legislative, path to be able to make sure when there are opportunities for us to come together, and you and I have come together on many big deals when it comes to that. But being here in Washington and seeing, the ebbs and flows and being resilient, makes no difference who's in office. We still got to do the work. You know what I mean? And I'm very fortunate to say that I've been invited to be a part of discussions, whether or not it's Democrat or Republican when it comes to fatherhood, because we do share in that, even though, and that belief that the essential nature of fathers, even though from a policy standpoint, we may think differently about how you go about doing it, but there's been no disagreement on the importance of our work. And so I would just say those things as a way of, again, connecting with our current practitioners, but also to understand to young people to know that, we love you, and we're still fighting for you, and we will fight for you until we have no more breath in our bodies. And to just know that if nobody has let them know that their love, we love them, Jerry, because that's what drives us in the work that we do for the love of our children and for the love of the future of our children.
Yeah. It's beautiful that you start off that way, Jeff, and that we end that way in love. Mm-hmm. As an African-American man, it's many times not reflected that brown and black men carry love.
Yes. That
we live with love. And that love is important, not only to love ourselves, but to love our communities, and to sacrifice in love for our children. And I think that has been the legacy of your work. The love that you have that honors your parents, that honors your people, that honors your work, and that honors all people in that way, And so, with that, brother, I just want to thank you and bring you honor and bring you respect, for all that you have done, and that all you will continue to do, because you still got more work to do. We ain't let you off now, just because you got a little bit older.
Right. Listen, the hip surgery won't keep me down. You know what I mean? And Jerry, let me just again congratulate you again. You received a high honor at our conference, our Pioneer Award. And for the viewing audience, let you know that when we started our conference back in 1998 in Oakland, California, the Honorable Mr. Jerry Taylor was our keynote speaker way back then. All right. And we've been connected and joined at the hip, since that time. And it's just, but see, collectively, Jerry, we can do a lot. We can't do anything by ourselves. So that's the other message. Collaboration, collective efforts. That's how you create critical mass. That's how you make folks understand that the work we do matters. If you're out there by yourself, solo act, at some point you're going to fall, and then you're going to go to folks to try to solicit their support, and it's not going to be there because you didn't collaborate in the first place, because you thought that the vision that you had was only yours and not one that God was trying to spread so that it became contagious and would flow through many, many people. And I'm glad that God put us on the same path to be able to spread the contagion about the importance of the work that we do to others.
Yeah. And I just want to give thanks for being able to be associated with you and doing this work together. And I look forward to more work together. As we conclude today, I just want to remind the audience of that significant message of love and interconnectedness, and also through that, forgiveness.
Yes.
That all of us are called at one time in our life to let go and to release and to forgive those that have put burdens on us, in order that we can carry forward to that next generation more blessings and less burdens. And
Yes.
the other message that came through loud and clear is to honor the elders. That there are people that have come before you, that we're not perfect in any, and we're still learning, but done the best we could in terms of providing some teachings and some values, but at the same time to honor and respect the next generation, the younger generations that have that voice, that they're willing to march and to protest and to speak up and do the work, but it's in that collaboration among all of us.
Yes.
And
yes.
let us not, as we're talking about fathers, forget the mothers and the women and the grandmothers and all those that really have been the root of everything that we've done, because from our mothers and our grandmothers and our companions and our sisters and the women leaders, we have learned about that tremendous unconditional love and sacrifice and the center of everything, the children. And so we want to thank everyone in this journey and challenge us all to collaborate, to come together as one people, so that the next generation of children can see an example of interconnected love and have more blessings and less burdens. Thank you all for listening today. And we ask you to share your feedback, share this podcast with other folks as well. Look up Dr. Johnson and all the wonderful things that he's doing there at MPCL. And we thank you very much, and may Creator bless you.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.